So, what do you think? Is it time for shaving? Say hi to the guys. Hey guys, this is Mittens. And he is standing here trying to decide if it's time to shave yet. But I guess this is a good introduction to him. You can see how large he is. But welcome to Shaving with Rich. And today we will be using a sample of soaps I just got from Chris. And then I've got 3 other ones for my Oh My God shipment. My Aristocrat, my +2 Badger brush of shaving or rat lathering, and a Crown King scuttle. I have no idea what aftershave I'm going to use. I'm probably just going to reach in and grab something at random, and we'll get on with the shave when we get everything gone. He's going to do his inspection as he's struggling to get down and get into his sink, if he does that, and we'll proceed in a moment. And we're back. Well, Mittens sat down, and now he's out in the hallway sitting with Buster, and they're playing. I interrupted their play, and I wanted him to come in and make sure everything was okay. This is, you guys have not seen this. This is a gift from me, from Sam, from a long time ago when I first started. It's one of my first Badger brushes, and it has amazing lathering properties. It's a little bit on the floppy side, which seems to help it to kick up a good lather. So we're loading and getting things ready. Tried to experiment today by putting the scuttle in the sink, filling it full of hot water, and then letting it soak in the water along with my brush while everything is warming up, in the hopes of having the scuttle plenty warm so I can have plenty of warm lather. We've had power here now for about 2 hours. We lost power this morning, and it was raining pretty excellently all day, and I kind of panicked a little bit, so I went out and brought in the generator from the barn and fired it up and saved my basement. And now we're ready to shave. I've got it shut off now that the power's back on. I've got a nice big chunk of lather out of that sample, and we are going to put her to some work here. It's being kind of noisy because the scuttle is not completely full of water. Got a little bit of an air gap. Let me finish that up. Now that I've got the Captain's Choice bowl, I'm finding I'm less and less satisfied with the shape of my Crown King scuttle. But it's the only scuttle I have. It's got a conical shaped bowl, and it's not as much room as in the Crown King or Captain's Choice, and so I'm flinging lather all over the place, making a mess. And I don't know if I used to like this scuttle a lot, but now that I've found something I like better, it's kind of always hard to go back. This is pretty thirsty soap. Oh, dang it. And I loaded enough to shave the neighborhood. So pretty sure my neck is healed up to the point where I can shave my whole face without too much worry of removing any scar tissue and opening up old wounds, which is nothing like Chad, who has emotional scars from his run-in with terrible blade. I don't have that problem. I just have, we'll call it post-traumatic blade syndrome. Right. Well, I guess Chad's got that too, but he just didn't cut himself open like a fish. And he was fortunate. Be careful, Dave, when you get that. Kentucky Dave. Be careful when you get that blade. I suspect it was made for lab use and shaving lab rats and stuff, because they don't feel nothing. We want to see them wiggling around. We don't want to see them just laying there. Or maybe it's for taking slivers off of lab samples. They use something, it doesn't look quite like this, but you use it to take tissue samples. Well, let's get this going, shall we? Not sure what year this Aristocrat is. No, it's from the 40s. I know I got it for $5 at the local antique store. It didn't look very good when I first laid eyes on it, but after a couple rounds of scrubbing bubbles, it came right around. The plating is good. It's got a little bit of varnish difficulties, and a lot of these ones that were actually used have. But it's a nice medium, not especially aggressive razor. And it takes the whiskers off just as good as anybody else. Oh, it gave me a little nip there. A brand new Gillette 7 o'clock black, an Indian blade, which I like real well. Thinking about, Chris Noir was talking about stories from my parents would tell, or what my dad would talk about. My father was in World War II in Korea, and then we lived in Okinawa as I was growing up. It was during the Vietnam era. He was a civilian then, but we lived on an air base. We were doing some logistics there. And he didn't tell a whole lot of his. He never left the United States for World War II. He entered the service in 1940 and joined the then fledgling Air Force. It was the Army Air Corps at the time he joined the Army. And was at several air bases all over the place. He volunteered to be a glider pilot, but somehow he ended up never leaving the States. He was in Florida and Georgia and California quite a bit. Now when he got discharged and then came back for World War II, or Korea, the Korean police action, and he was in Japan. That's where he met my mother. This really doesn't feel as like the last time I used a black. This one isn't quite as smooth. It's kind of bitey. I met her at Yokota Air Base near Tokyo. And then in 1952, she came to the United States. And they got married, and I came along 8 years later. He sometimes would talk about what he did. He was a flight engineer, but he was a, what do they call it? He stayed on the ground. He was in charge of a number of planes, engineers, flying over Korea, and he would work with them. They did get up in the air a couple of times. He had a kind of a strange sense of humor. He flew in B-29s, and he had some adventures around the plane. I got just a touch. My usual spots. You guys are pretty familiar with that if you've watched me any length of time. The guys who flew in those planes, one of their favorite tricks was to, there was a pressurized tunnel that ran between the cockpit, the front half of the plane, and the back, and it had a hatch, and it was all sealed up, and their favorite trick was to get in that tunnel and pass gas while they're going through it, and seal it up in there when they get to the other side where they were going to stay for a spell, so that anybody who entered there had to go through it. And he got a big charge out of that. Dad had like I said, he had a rather earthy sense of humor. Those were interesting times for the Army. You know, the Army Air Corps, it turned into the Army Air Force. And at that same time, they went from wearing brown shoes to black. So Dad, being the enterprising young man he was at the time, dyed his boots black. He didn't buy new ones. He just dyed his old ones, because that was just the way he was. He also mentioned he was on the ground somewhere checking out a plane, and was fiddling with the hose that he found. Turns out it was the relief tube in the cockpit. He took hold of it, lifted it up, and he heard somebody hollering from under the plane. And somebody who was taking a break in the shade under the wing of the plane, and he just dumped about a gallon of urine on him. He said he crawled through the escape hatch to the back half of the plane and went out the back door so that he wouldn't get yelled at. He always told that story with police. There were other stories, I'm sure. He didn't talk too much about them though. I found out later, when we were getting his records for VA benefits for my mother, we lost a lot of his enlistment papers. So I got his records from St. Louis. Had a giant warehouse there apparently. It had apparently been a problem there, and a lot of records had been lost, but fortunately his was not, and found out that my father had a Silver Star. Unfortunately, he's no longer alive, and I can't ask him about it. And I didn't see anything in his 201 jacket, or whatever it is they call it then, personnel file, because I got all of his medical records and all of his pay stubs and everything from scoop to nuts. But I couldn't find anything on that Silver Star. If any of you guys are familiar with the Korean era, I'd appreciate information if that was a kind of a normal thing for any kind of a particular excitement that he might have gotten involved in that I can correlate with the paperwork. I'd be interested in finding out what that was all about, because I haven't found the star either. It isn't in any of his boxes of stuff, but he must have done something, good or bad or indifferent. He did it. And my dad's story for the day. I'll try to think of a mom story that isn't tragic in the intervening time between now and our next time together. I will appreciate you guys taking the time to come and play with me on my shaving adventures, and there are many more like me on shavingcadre.com. Always something fun to happen. You can count on me always posting my shaves, good or bad, mistakes, blood and guts and everything else that happens. And this is Major Rich coming to you from Central Oahu, where it's snowing now, and we will talk to you in a couple days. Bye-bye.